Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths. Custom faction design. With a bit of a twist today, it's not the custom faction I've been dreaming up that I've featured before, the one that's all about explosions and heavy armor flimsily covered by wood. No, this is another one. I have 5 of these things in my brain, and this is the endgame one that we're thinking of right now. So the shtick with this faction is there are only 2 things pretty much that they're not allowed to use, and that is high explosive and flak. So across all weapon systems, nothing explosive, and so basically no HE, no flak for advanced cannons, no HE for crams or missiles, but everything else is fair game. So they're intended to be the boss faction, and the reason I decided to... Well, firstly, the reason for this video is I'm burnt out on tutorials at the moment, so I need a bit of a break from that, and I just feel like showing off what I've been up to, so that's all a bit of fun. And the second thing is, I kind of wanted to challenge myself with this endgame faction. I want to make them scary as hell, but at the same time not relying just on spamming high explosive, which is by far the easiest way to make a scary gun in this game at the moment, because high explosive APS is very strong, high explosive missiles also very strong, especially with torpedoes, and high explosive cram. I've mentioned crams, of course, and did I mention crams? I don't even know. That's how fuzzy I am right now. Any case, so blowing things up is a good way to go, but if you... And I'm on the fence, by the way, about heat and hesh, about shape charges and squash heads. I'm not sure whether to consider them explosive, because they are explosive, but they mostly do kinetic damage, so I think I might include them in this faction, just to make them a little bit more scary, because it's hard to make a truly scary faction without at least a little bit of heat and hesh. And I find that APS shells, even if you don't stack warheads behind them, they can still be quite effective when spammed. In any case, so I have a whole string of fortresses of these things, and it's considerably less organized than the fortresses I've made for the other custom faction, because this is way more experimental. I know how to make a high explosive APS or cram cannon. That's pretty straightforward. But especially after the APS update, making a decent kinetic or EMP APS is a little bit more difficult. So there's a lot of experiments that I've made. Quite a few of these are a little bit lackluster, and some of them I just deleted and they'll never see the light of day because they were so bad. But so, starting off with, we have this one. So you can see lots of fortresses here. Hopefully this video is done before 2020 is upon us. So these are 500mm guns. They're triple barrel. The Tetris is not going to win any awards. This is a lazy boy Tetris. So inputs are on the bottom, autoloaders and clips are on top. What the? Ah yeah, I did cunning things here. Interesting. But in any case, so and then you have gauge increases and coolers on top here, going up to here. Sticking ammo intakes on the firing piece itself these days is kind of a waste of time. I wouldn't really recommend it. So yeah, that's pretty much the gun. And the shell it fires is this. It is a 8-meter long shell. Not many gunpowder casings. It's got a base bleeder, even though arguably it doesn't need that. Let's see how... Yeah, you don't need... Base bleeders have been nerfed into the ground. There's not a huge amount of point to them. You need a lot of gunpowder casings in order to make them worth it, or they're useful with railguns. It's got an inertial fuse. It's got a bunch of frag bodies, which actually this angle is way too small. I should fix that. Made this some time ago. Lots of stacked EMP, so about EMP stacks a lot better than a lot of other chemical shells, by which I mean HE, flak, and frag actually. It stacks pretty well. 4,500 is nothing to write home about. Partially that's because of the disruptor conduit right on the front. It scrambles shields, it passes through, blah blah blah. That's not really necessary as of right now, because shields are pretty bad. Designing a faction in which their main shtick is kinetic weaponry It's kind of a double whammy thanks to the APS update. Well, because kinetic damage across the board for APS has been nerfed, but shields are also nerfed heavily, so I don't know where they're at. Interesting to look at anyway, so might as well spawn in something that has a lot of shields just to show how these guns work. There's 3 of them, well there's 5 of them, because basically if a gun isn't particularly good, and spoiler alert, these aren't particularly good really, at this gauge a high explosive is so much better than frag when it comes to APS. I just stick more of them on the fortress until I get numbers I like, so if 5 of these turrets, considering that they're pretty darn expensive, probably not my best work. But in any case... So there's the Retaliator, and the reason I've spawned the Retaliator is because it still has a lot of shields on it. And it's got, hopefully you can see, unless they were all removed for some reason, it's got tight shields that hug the hull. And firing like that is a great way, and also it's quite EMP vulnerable. There's lots of stuff on it that can get EMP fried. Forgot to mention the firing rate for this. The middle one fires a bit faster, about 4.9 rounds per minute. It's pretty terrible, and 3 rounds per minute as well. It's a little bit better once you remember just how massive those shells are, but yeah, so they kind of do a job. At the same time, not really. Yeah, disruptors are not actually nearly as useful as they once were. It's on the one hand sad, and the other hand it's how it is. Lots of EMP down. What were you aiming at there? Deacon's hell. So not great numbers. Come on, fire once more. For daddy. So you see shields are being fried, lots of EMP vulnerable stuff is flying off. But yeah, that's about all these guns could do raw damage. Oh my goodness. So yeah, they can do that, and that's another reason that I spawned with the Retaliator, is because it's really satisfying when you take one of its turrets off. So yeah, that's fun, and that's these guns right here. Not amazing. I might stick that on a easier design, assuming I can do that. So next on the line... Oh god, this is so hard to see. Did I get that right? Yeah, so now we have a slightly different arrangement. Like, these days what I do with fortresses is that I design a turret, and then I kind of just preview the turret layout of the craft it'll be on the fortress itself, which is quite a handy way just to get a sense of how big the resulting thing's going to be. It's a handy tip, actually, for building things smaller or bigger. So what we have here is penetration depth crams. So these are pen depth frag, which is, by the way, if you're wondering which is better for a cram cannon, pen depth frag or pen depth high explosive, it's high explosive any day of the week. It's so much better. It's a 360 arc of damage. It can hit every single block in its radius, and it's just in real terms of real numbers, it does so much more damage. Pen depth frag can be effective, but you kind of need like really big shells, and you really need to get the density up in order to make it work really well. And you can see the stats and minimum reload time right here. It helps to get the damage of every single fragment over 1,000. If it's less than that, it's not really going to do much. And the kinetic damage is pretty decent. And I should have rigged up multiple AIs on this thing, but I have not. There's also a smeg ton of EMP missiles here, just kind of because I wanted to get a sense of what kind of damage output this hypothetical craft could put out when it has its crams, its missiles, and its APS. And on the note of APS, these are awful. They are pretty ugly, to be perfectly honest with you, and like, yeah, the Tetris is nothing to write home about. It is literally a gauge snake. It's got 2 little autoloaders, and then it's mostly focusing on being... This started out as a direct input feeder, and then the fire rate was awful, and so I added 2 autoloaders in the back here, and the result is just pretty unsatisfactory. So probably won't be using these ever. They're not very good. And what they're loaded with is also not very good. So what we have here, so right here at this magical gauge, 333 millimeters, you can get 3 shell components and jam it into a 1 meter shell rack. And this is not great. It has pretty lousy thump damage with lousy AP, only 12 fragments. Fragment damage isn't actually spectacular. You want it a lot higher than this. And so yeah, these are not good. And honestly, if I swapped out these hollow points for a squash head, that'd probably be a lot better. So we go here. Suddenly you have this the spalling metric, and the mere fact that it can make frag spawn on the other side of a wall immediately makes it a lot better. So yeah, so that's why I'm kind of considering adding squash heads to this. Otherwise, HE-free faction. So let's spawn in something. Let's have Onyx Watch. Let's have a Jormungand. Like, I'm not trying to prove anything in particular with the targets I'm spawning in here. It's just it's nice to have a variety of things to shoot at. And so you see those numbers right there, about 2,000 kinetic damage and about 179 thump. That was those little guns, and that's mostly because they missed. But yeah, pretty not good. Hopefully the crams do something interesting. Yep. So yeah, this is what a decent pen depth frag cram can do. Let's see what happened here. Yeah, it went right into this turret and exploded it, went in here, ripped up the inside. Jormungand, not the most heavily armed thing in the world because it's mostly made of wood. And then the EMP missiles come in and they're pretty good at what they do, especially against exposed crammed deck guns. Yeah, this is a faction that is going to probably missile spam a lot, because missiles are a very reliable way of getting EMP off. Yep, there's some more pen depth frag goodness. And there's a whole mess of really crap hollow points. So, that's this little turret, and these secondary guns need to change them. Definitely need to change them. So we go here. So that's there. So what do we got here now? We've got something slightly different. So here's more triple turrets. I think the Tetris is a little bit different. So this is the kind of Tetris which I don't have a name for, but I'm very fond of it. It's basically creating a floor of coolers, which really allows you to have quite a few of them. Again, 6 meter long shells, which generally is just, I don't know, it's just a better number than 8 meter long shells for a lot of the time. Whole bunch of recoil absorbers up here, sea of inputs, and just lots of this. And more recoil absorbers up here. A better rate of fire than the triple turrets previously, so this is where I was kind of getting warmed up a little bit. So middle gun, rate of roughly 10 rounds per minute, and side guns about 8, so better rates of fire. For those of you who like all your guns in the turret to fire at exactly the same rate, I am sorry. I tend not to bother with that simply because it's, I don't know, it never really bothers me, and I kind of like it when turrets have a staggered fire. You'll see that a little bit later. I did it on purpose. So what are these things? So, these are triple turrets that actually are justified, apart from being cool. The turret cap could possibly use some work. A little bit thicker. Yeah, so I need to get into the habit of putting better top armor on my turrets, and like, what the hell? I've actually left air gaps in here. This is very, very bad, by the way. Like, that's embarrassing. I didn't even remember I did that. So, having an air gap in here basically means that Hesh, if it hits the top of this turret, will just shred. Well, look at it. It's local weapon controllers, just to ensure. These local weapon controllers are here to ensure that if one of these barrels gets shortened, that all of these guns can still aim independently and still hit the target. If you don't do that, the local weapon controller down controlling the turret aims with just one of the guns, which means that shells from the other guns will miss more. In any case, so this air gap here, heat will spawn when the stream hits non-structural blocks anyway, not much you can do about that, but Hesh can only spawn where there's air. No wait, that's wrong. In any case, having an air gap in here is not a good idea, because it compromises the already pretty bad armor stacking of this turret. So, how is it? Yeah, these things are not as solid as they look, unfortunately. In any case, here's the shells they're firing. So it's 3 different shells. The first one is a 500. They're all 500 millimeters. Is a pretty hefty frag hollow point. So what do we have here? So we've got a decent amount of thump damage for once. Big hollow points are still pretty decent at doing lots of thump damage. Armor PS could be better, but without railgun assistance, it's kind of hard to get the thump armor PS of hollow points up. It's got 21 fragments, which like is not great, but it's not terrible either. Fragment damage is over 9,000 per, so that's a lot better as well. And these probably shouldn't be 180. I was recently told that the best angle for a frag warhead that you expect and want to make hull contact is around 135, because it's the best compromise between all the fragments going in the same direction and fragment damage. So it really should be something like this. And you see, it's not that much of a difference. It just means that all the frags are going pretty much in the same zip code as the, whatchamacallit. Alright, actually let's set all these fragments to the same one, doesn't matter. Okay, so quite a bit less damage, about 1,000 less, but hopefully they're still going in roughly the same direction. And the hollow point head, which means you don't need to use an inertial fuse, which is very nice. So that's one of them. Next one is pretty much the same, if I'm remembering correctly, from the Disruptor frag shell I showed before, just slightly shorter. And same thing, Disruptor, a few EMP warheads, less EMP strength, only has 3 warheads in there, and a few frag bodies, inertial fuse, so if it hits armor, it still delivers its payload. And then this last one, which is one of my personal favorite shells, is the hollow point EMP. So, similar thump damage to the first shell, way more EMP strength. APS still not the best thing for delivering EMP, but it's kind of good just because of the angle it tends to fly in at. It tends to hit turrets in the face, and just it can deliver EMP. Kind of, it's hard to explain really. It delivers EMP at different locations than than anything else really. Missiles tend to EMP the top of things, assuming they're shooting at ships, and as do EMP crams. And particle cannons, well, they're not as good at the same ranges that APS is. So it has a niche, kind of. And so yeah, this, again, let's spawn in. Let's spawn in. What can we spawn in? Something that has lots of heavy armor. Spawn in a bull shark, why not? So turn you off, and away you go. Kaboom! And I think every single one of those missed, which is a bit annoying. And that is where Disruptor warheads are actually pretty useful, because they zip straight through shields, and they basically fry shields, which allows other EMP shells to dig in a little bit. Let's see, let's pause here. Yep, there's a shield. It's gone. And that's made a nice little hole for the hollow point EMP shells to jump in. Armor busting is okay. It's not great. There's really no penetration on these turrets. Like the frag does kind of do it, but at the same time not really, so you can see my troubles here. It kind of peels things like an onion and kind of fries vulnerable components on the way in, but yeah, it's like, let's have a look here. So Combined with a laser, actually, this would actually be amazing. I'm saying actually too much. Because popping off these smoke generators would mean that any laser mounted on the same craft as these things would suddenly not have to deal with any form of laser defense, which is pretty good. Same thing with the shields, actually. So that's a pretty decent synergy right there, and it probably also means the laser, considering that you can still make a pretty good armor-busting laser, would probably be doing most of the damage. Come on, guys, I want you to pop this turret. Can you do that for me? Yeah, we're going to be here for a while. So I reckon... Oh yeah, that's hollow point for you. If you get him big enough, they can just flatten blocks like no one's business. Okay, lads, you've had your chance. I want you to pop this here turret. There you go. So decent thump damage with a little bit of frag. Actually pretty decent at blowing turrets off if they hit in the right spot. But yeah, if they hit in the right spot. A hash shell would have done that a lot easier, but such is the life if you try and be clever with your fashion. So let's go here, here, next one. So, the turret cap on this one's interesting. It has really no protection on top, so this I learned off, who was it? I think it was, yeah, Carolus Magnus. Hi Carolus, how's it going? This is a trick you can use, and this is mostly for aesthetics. In fact, it is for aesthetics. It's pretty dumb to stick metal plates just covering gaps here and expect it to do any form of defense, because the health of these things is non-existent. Like, flak will blow them off like really easily. If you actually want decent protection, what you and still want to keep the profile of your turret like kind of sleek, you can use applique panels instead. And I have warmed up to applique panels considerably since they were first introduced, simply because they actually have decent stats now, and just they are quite good if you don't want, say, your turret looking a little bit too tall. So that's very nice right there. But yeah, like if you don't want to do this, the metal plate thing is at the very least good for decoration, which is why it's in the decorations tab. Herby-der. And this gun is another one that's a bit of a failed experiment, so ignore this one. I tried with very small gauge, and I ended up being stuck at 157 millimeters. So this is another failure. So this is hollow point frag again, and basically what I found by experimenting with this all the time is that you really do need railguns to make this useful. So maximum rail draw is about 2,400. This is not a good shield, thump damage is non-existent, and frag damage is abysmal, so 2,400. That's already looking a lot better. Still not great though, so to give you an idea of how crappy this gun is, let's spawn in something that really, in a perfect world, would be really easy to deal with. It is cool to look at, and it is cool when it fires. But you can see here, this is a capital, and it's barely doing anything to it. And the capital, yeah, okay, it's doing better than I thought it would, actually. But really, like, for a gun that expensive, you want it to do a little bit better than this. In fact, let's do an experiment right now, and just replace this, because this... Hang on. Let's replace this with a squash head, and just you'll see what I mean. So, you might be saying, like, hang on, like using a squash head without any HE warheads behind it? What is this madness? They can still work if you do that. It's just, don't think of it as a regular squash head. Think of it as squash head bonus. So we go here, and we just clear clips. Now it's doing that again. It should be okay, so let's do that again. And it will load any minute now, I hope. Hello? Maybe I should have taken this out of play. Whee! Unfused crams. There we go. Also, one other reason to use Hesh with this faction that I'm debating myself is because I freaking love the pink traces. I love that. That's So cute. For, admittedly, what it is a horrible murder weapon, but, well, a horrible murder weapon for tanks anyway, but, yeah, I just really like it. And you'll see right now, damage output is a lot better. Hesh is still pretty ridiculous, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, this is meant to be the endgame faction, so having that might be a good idea. Oh, yeah, really, the more I say it, the more I am convinced that I must. Because most of the damage is kinetic. Anyway, that's what I'll tell myself anyway. So, anyway, so that's that gun, and we've just found out that Hesh is still, if not king, at least a prince in terms of damage dealing. That's there. There. Next one is this. And similar conclusions. I tested this. Well, firstly, what the hell is this thing? This is an 11-barreled 333 millimeter APS turret. It's Tetris is what I call lazy man Tetris, because it's just the turrets, the gauge tanks are all lined up in a row. You look at the underside, it's just separate rows all the way here, which means the guns all have pretty different rates of fire, and the autoloaders are all in a row again, and just they're alternating just so they don't mess with each other, so they're not connected. That is the sole bit of genius in this. It is otherwise pretty inefficient and pretty terrible, to be perfectly honest. For the same size and cost, you could get a much better gun. But yeah, it's actually slightly too ridiculous, but I think I learned a thing or two while playing it. Turret cap is very big. That's the other problem with turrets which have too many guns in them. The turret cap naturally gets bigger. Like, even if you try and minimize the size, the fact that the guns all in a row are 11 meters wide means that the turret cap has to be not only wider, but a lot longer. In fact, these barrels don't even need to be this long. It's just that if they were just 4 meters long, they wouldn't even poke out of the turret cap. So it was all very silly. I was in a silly mood when I made this. And again, hollow point frag, bad shell, especially, well, at this length, really, and with no rail draw, bad shell. Do not do. So, to demonstrate its badness, what's a good thing to have? Let's have a grey Talon. Craft airship. Yeah, let's go. I want something that doesn't spawn in a Bertha just for giggles. And here we go. So that did pretty much nothing. But now this thing has staggered fire. Because the Bertha has shields, a few of them are going to bounce off. And watching the numbers up in the top right corner, they might seem good until you remember just how big and ugly that gun is. It is kind of doing the trick, but yeah, not really. So yeah, so all of these things have different max RPNs. It's like, I don't know, really this is the kind of thing I should use for the other custom faction, the one that is all about heavy armor and wood and high explosive silliness. So yeah, it is dishing out decent hurt, but yeah, not great. And I'll do the same thing I did before. Squash head. So here, and pull, up. And we'll spawn in Bertha again. Just so you can see the contrast. And pause and look at these adorable pink traces. I love that they changed that. And we missed completely. And already you see that's so much better. Actually, I think he's aiming for... yeah, he's aiming for a different thing. That probably helps. Yep, Bertha's about to sink. Aim for this guy up here, please. If Bertha sinks, you can't shoot at her anymore. Yeah, that is much better damage output. Just look at the numbers up there. So yeah, just a hash frag is actually pretty good, because if you hit an armor target, the hash just... the thump damage and the spalling just absolutely murders it. And if you have to hit a soft target, the fragments absolutely murder it. So it's pretty win-win, really. So here... despawn you. Aha, now we get into interesting territory. Railgun experiments. Now, railguns are very, very good for kinetic weapons. And particularly this faction, I am planning to have a lot of railguns. I unfortunately haven't been building that many because reasons, I guess. But in any case, this is an 18mm hollow point railgun. And you see, well, no railgun draw. It's pretty crap, but 400, 241 thump damage, and most importantly, because it has a whole mess of sabot warheads in here. Sabo? Like, oh my goodness, like, I've asked people multiple times, like, how you pronounce that, and so many different people give me different answers. Like, apparently, Sabo, Sabot, oh my god. I think, the way it goes is that the British say Sabot, the Americans say Sabo, and the French say Sabot. So, I am gonna be deliberately inconsistent on that, and if I make you cry, you feel free to blame another country, because you can't blame me, haha. But in case, because of all the these things, the armor piercing of the thump damage is 30. Now, remember that thump damage ignores armor stacking, so if it hits a layer of armor that is multiple blocks thick, it doesn't care about the blocks behind. The bonus they give to the blocks in front, it'll damage all of them for this armor pierce value. And metal has 15 armor, this is double that, so it does full damage to metal, which means this little gun does surprising amounts of damage, especially since it fires 790 rounds per minute. So let's have a thing, so let's go here and let's spawn something that has... I love shooting at the Kingstead, by the way, simply because it's one of the few faction craft which has reliably thick armor. It's about 4 meters of metal around the hull. It's also why it's so expensive. So you see in here, this is pretty thick, and you can stop moving because I want to just concentrate shells on, yeah, right here. So that is not a lot of thump damage, but the mere fact that it hits multiple blocks at once, and the fact that it does full damage to metal, means that it can peel a craft pretty easily. Imagine if you scale this up just a little bit, you can get some pretty decent results. The fact that these shells are also very, very fast also helps with that. So you see the muzzle velocity is over 1,465 meters per second. Quite expensive little thing, though. But probably, I don't know, I'll probably stick that on a cruiser or something like that. See, not fantastic numbers, but we're already at like 100,000 thump damage. And just like trims barrels off pretty easily. Also decent against aircraft, so... turn you back on. Let's spawn in a lightning hood craft. Let's spawn in... Let's spawn in you. I haven't seen you ever. Yep. We just got some numbers, and this is a fast thing. It goes 93 meters per second. Yep, I think we just disabled it. So you ever want to... Actually, hollow point railguns, small ones, make pretty scary anti-air because they never over-penetrate. Pretty much all their kinetic damage does something useful. Yeah, this thing is having a bad day right now. Admittedly, a laser would be doing a much better job right now, and fear not, this faction will have all the lasers. Especially against the things like the lightning hoods, actually. The little railgun is giving this thing a kind of a bad day. In any case, enough of that. So yeah, also the mere fact that railguns don't have to worry about cooling, huge advantage in terms of spamming them. How many factions? Jeez. We're just about halfway! Great! So, enough about that. You do that, and now we get onto something but interesting. So, we're back to pen depth frag. This time it's APS. And this isn't a great one. Like, for multiple reasons. Firstly, exposed mantlets, not a good idea. It looks cool, but is not good for keeping your guns alive. And quadruple turret, again, it's cool points rather than anything else. And 271mm. Not the best, especially for a non-railgun, not the best gauge for this. Like, over 250mm is the gauge you want to be for APS pen depth. So over here, we have the shell itself. Lots of gunpowder, gunpowder, very necessary, 4 meters long. Base bleeder, again, can I get rid of this? Yes, I can. There's really... No, okay. I guess with larger shells, you kind of... What the fudge? What just happened? Oh, crap. I ruined everything. Base bleeder, pen depth fuse. I need to add that back. There we go, so... Yep, nope, we need that. We need that. Okay, penetration depth fuse. I can't remember what the... 2 meters. I hope that's what I had before, because I can't remember what I had before. I could reload this in again, but deacons hell, I'd have to mess with everything else. So any case, so let's have a look at the Tetris of this thing again. Again, it's the lazy... Ooh, this is a little bit different. This is rotational Tetris, so you have going around in a circle 4 separate guns. The gaps in between them I generally fill with either recoil absorbers or surge protectors. And surge protectors, you might be thinking, why would you stick that in the middle? The reason for that is that if an EMP missile lands on the top of this turret, I do not want it getting anywhere near the local weapon controller. That would be very, very annoying. So therefore, having a whole bunch of surge protectors in the middle actually helps quite a bit, I have found. And no local weapon controls up here, doesn't really... Well, it could use them, but also at the same time not really. And pretty not great rate of fire, about 12 rounds per minute. This is the advantage of this kind of rotational symmetry in here. What the hell? I left a gap in my thing. Whoop. We don't want that. I don't know how that happened. But in any case, all these guns are exactly the same stats-wise. And that's very convenient. What's the thing we can shoot at? Let's have a thresher. Why not? Boom, and I see your kinetic damage and raise you 4. Okay, so how thick is that? Not very thick. Yeah, not very thick at all. This was not a good test subject for this, but it can get in there. It can certainly get in there. That's, I guess, perhaps cruiser, maybe even destroyer levels of gunnery we're talking about here. Like, real-life ship classification does not mix well with From the Depths. At all. How about you pop this turret here? How about you try that again? Like right now. You didn't do it. Let's have a more meaty target for this. Steel Spiders... Trondheim. Boop. So there's the Trondheim. And let's try and get through the side armor, which, can't remember how thick it is. Boop. Oh yeah, it's getting in there. It is getting in there. So, not astonishingly good pen depth, but it is digging in a little bit. let's try and... you know what? I don't like the look of that turret. Can you pop that? Did it manage it? I can't even see. Yep, there we go. So yeah, this is where, like, I kind of started messing around with penetration depth. And, thinking about, this has potential. Because it certainly makes fragments a lot more interesting. And this is kind of the pinnacle of that. You'll notice this one is painted, and that is because this is where I decided, you know what, I want to figure out the color scheme of this. So I'm thinking lots of black and grey, with a little bit of white trim here and there. And this is the bigger, meaner brother of this fortress over here. 8 meters long, 500mm pen depth shell. And this is a little bit more beefy, to say the least. So, decent armor piercing, a decent AP, 16,000 kinetic damage, and this is getting kinetic damage up, very important. 14 fragments, but the number of damage per fragment is pretty decent, and 180 degrees, so the idea is it punches into the middle of a thing, it explodes, and every single fragment dishes this much damage. You'll notice it's mostly solid warheads, armor piercing here for that AP, penetration depth for about set to 5 meters, simply because it almost has the KD for that. I haven't done the math on this, I was just messing around. Again, I have a base bleeder, do I need it? No, I do not. Seriously, every time I'm just so used to sticking base bleeders on everything. They used to be so good. Now they're not very good at all. And only one frag warhead body. The whole idea is that you don't need much kaboom on pen depth shells. Because the whole plan is that they get inside something, and they're right in the middle of fragile stuff. Engines, AI compartments, the middle of turrets and all that stuff. So, like real life armor-piercing shells and naval rifles, it's mostly solid with just a smidge of kaboom in it. So let's test, let's spawn in the Trondheim again, simply so you get an idea of how much stronger this this cannon is. So what were we shooting at before? We were shooting directly at the hull. Especially at this angle, what happens here? Yep, digging in a little bit. I forgot to mention the rate of fire. The rate of fire is pretty good. What did that do? Yeah, the Trondheim is actually, kind of, well, not really. It's, popping steam engines. Let's, aim for this turret right here. Yep, and that is a dead cram turret. It will never dance in the moonlight again. Not that cram turrets do that to begin with. So rate of fire, again, isn't amazing, but it's pretty decent for such a compact 500mm gun. It's 7.3 on the side ones and 9.8 on the middle one. And again, same counter Tetris as before, simply because this one is... oh, it's just so easy, and it's also pretty brainless. I don't have to think about it too hard. Snaky, autoloaders on top, alternating, recoil absorbers in the middle, and a little bit of a jink here, just to get them all nice and close, because there's a gap in the middle, just so these clips can have, these autoloaders can have 2 clips attached to them. Yeah, that's pretty good, and that Trondheim is not having the best of days right now. Oh, that is the wrong direction to be sailing when faced with a gun like this. So how about you go right here? Yeah, the trick with pen depth is also, well, it's like a lot of things in From the Depths, you kind of have to spam it a little bit to get best results, because the whole idea is that, like, it needs to hit a critical point. If it doesn't, well, that's Kinetic in a nutshell, really. So yeah, getting in there. Once again, I should mention that using HE for this, definitely better. Just simply because you don't have to worry about the angles of everything and all that jazz. But yeah, moving on to this guy. play, and you go over here. Now we're back to the pen depth frag, and at this point I was like, you know what, I just want to really blow things up and get these as strong as I possibly can. And I kind of succeeded and also kind of failed. There's 5 of these things, simply because the target I was choosing to shoot at was none other than, well, our good friend the Tyr. And the Tyr's LAM system is actually still pretty good. Like, it can fry, if you only throw a few cram shells at it, it will zap them out of the air really easily. And you'll see, with this 15 gun, 2000mm volley, it'll still pop a few of them before it gets in. So again, these this is standard cram Tetris, by the way, it's not even worth showing. Actually, hang on a minute, hang on, you stop moving, and you stop moving. Might as well show you. I didn't actually show it before, I apologize, but it's pretty standard stuff. So you see in here it has that kind of cross-hatching pattern in here. Sorry if this is hard to see. But the gauge increases, I found that gauge corners, oh, they're so good. They are so helpful to just cramming as much gauge increase in here as possible. Because you see, like here in the middle, this gun is kept separate only thanks to these gauge corners, which attaches on. This isn't on what do you call it? 4 out of 6 sides. So there's 2 sides that it's not going to attach. That's really helpful, especially when the next fortress over, you get to see like jamming as many guns into a turret as you can for crams. Gauge increase corners, they save your bacon. So, you know what? I don't want the Tyr to dodge anything anymore, so let's do that. And of course it aims for the part of the ship that's pretty useless, but it did make a nice window through it. Did I stagger these things? Yep, I did. So again, this is the staggered firing I was talking about. I do this for cool points. And you see 5 pop there, 10 pop there. Oh my goodness, I regret everything now. Oh dear. So yeah, that's the downside of staggering your crams like that. Like, on the right side, every shell is not redundant, so it doesn't, like, land in the same spot all the time. Oh my god, the Tyr's lambs are the worst. Although those got through, actually. Tyr has a lot of storage on its lamb system, so if you just keep it up, the pressure, it eventually runs out of juice. Come on, run out of juice. Oh, yes! And once you pop the engine... Oh, whoa, I missed something important over here. Lots of block confetti. Okay, guys, quit messing around. Let's pop this turret. Yay! So that's all I really want from a pen depth cram, is can it blow the Tyr's turrets off in one volley. Of course it has to hit the darn thing first. Do it again, yay! And that is why crams are awesome. Oh, you didn't quite do it. Why not? One more. There you go. Okay, one more. The Tyr has ridiculously tough turrets, by the way. It's kind of hard to pop them off. Unless you aim at the right spot. Yay! Well, that's a nicely defanged Tyr with its turret sinking to the bottom. And now we're going to see that again. Because it was so much fun the first time. Go over here and pull out of play, and you go into play. So, same idea with these ones, except instead of 5 3-gun turrets, these are 3 5-gun turrets. Simply because, I don't know, it's just, I don't know, I like the number 5. And I think, yeah, this Tetris is a little bit different, and you'll notice there's a lot more gauge increases on the back, because I had nowhere else to put them. so you see here a little bit different, a little bit different. It's all in a line. This is a lazy man Tetris, as I like to call it. So you go, remember in the earlier thing, like it was, what was the pattern? It was a connector, autoloader, pellet, connector, and, no, what was it? Connector, autoloader, pellet. This is connector, autoloader, but the next line over is connector, pellet, pellet. So it's basically all the connectors are just one space away from each other, the autoloaders are jammed in between, and everything in the middle is filled up with pellets. This is not efficient Tetris. The usual way is much better. It is overall cheaper because you have more pellets and autoloaders than connectors, but the reason this is useful is it allows you to rather brainlessly jam way more guns into a turret. So yeah, and brainless is the word, because it's just rows of connectors that you just add up. And so same gauge, 2000mm, max gauge, and stats are still decent, so 3000 damage at minimum reload per fragment, 14,000 kinetic damage with ludicrously high AP, and so yeah, let's test drive this against the tier now. I love shooting at the tier. I love watching it die. Like, it has been so annoying to me for so long, I just can't resist anymore. And I feel this gets me a little better than the other one. Assuming we can... You know, the annoying thing about the tier these days is that the darn thing is so fast. It cruises along at, well, it's a lot slower now because I just blew off its steam props. Actually, what the hell? It got right in there, didn't it? Yep, whoa, yeah, it fried the steam engines and took out a torpedo turret. Well done, boys. And let's see that magic again. Again, staggered fire between 18 to 21 seconds. So yeah, I think I prefer these turrets more, simply because, what the hell got taken out here? Yep, more steam destruction. Yay! I should relearn how to use steam. Like, not steam the thingamabob. Wait a minute, what am I looking at? Huh. I was just looking at how much, like, space I have left. I've kind of gotten away with myself. Okay, let's hurry this up, peeps. Turret pop? Let's aim right in the middle here. Let's see what happens if we do this. Good things. I think we just blew up one turret. Let's aim right in the middle. Right in the middle. Let's do it again. Come on. Come on. 2 turrets for the price of 1. 2 turrets for the price of 1. Yep, there's one. Can you get the other one? Yep, there we go. And one more for Daddy. One more, come on. Yay! Yay! I'm so happy. Okay, so we're almost done here with all this, like, you could forget that I'm making a custom faction here. Like, this is honestly, this whole custom faction thing, it is for fun. It is totally for giggles at this point, and if I ever finish that custom campaign they're going to be designed for, I'll eat my hat. Like, I will relish it, but I will eat it. And so to finish us off, you remember those 500mm pen depth turrets? Well, this is where I decided to get cute with it. Like I mentioned before, I like to preview the turret arrangement that I plan to put on ships on the fortress, and this is it. So, a little bit different, so the guns are spaced out a little bit, just, and that's purely for aesthetic purposes, like having them squished up together. I don't know, I've kind of been on a trying to build more realistically lately, simply because, well, it kind of looks good, and that's the aesthetic. That's the thing with faction design, is that aesthetics are a lot more important. Like, you can't ignore. No one wants to shoot at a faction that isn't pretty. Like, yeah, you gotta make it fun for people, you know? You gotta give them something to look forward to. So that's what this is. So grey paint job, space barrels, a little bit of elevation. And see, these are the same things as before, pretty much. Stats are exactly the same. 500mm, these whopping big pen depth shells. And these secondary guns here, they're not winning any prizes, because, again, they are that slightly better than previous hollow point frag, 100mm. So 11 thump armor pierce is way better, 952 thump damage, 7 fragments, and they actually, well, 180 degree angle. Again, not the best for this, because too many fragments are going the wrong way. But yeah, and also timed fuse. Actually, that's why this is 180, my bad. Timed fuse, so these things count as like rudimentary anti-air. So we spawn in, let's have the same thing. Whoops, where are we going? Like, let's plane. The orbit. So this is, I'm planning for this faction to kind of have a World War II, at least for their ships, kind of a World War II aesthetic, but with a lot of advanced weaponry. So look forward to battleships. This faction will have lots of them. So I mentioned before, hollow points are great at this kind of thing. Timed frag is also pretty good at this. Although, frankly, these guns are mostly decoration. The orbit is actually pretty annoying to shoot down, I just realized. Oh well, we'll have to activate the missiles then. So these missiles, EMP and fragment missiles, nothing to write home about. But the whole point of them is just a bit of EMP damage. And also to stop dodgy stuff like that. From having an easy day. And the guns, well, you've seen them before, so let's have all these guys fired up. So turn them all off first, and spawn in the tier, because I love shooting the tier. The tier must die. I could shoot at it all day, and I often have, actually. So... what kind of damage are we getting out here? Pretty good damage, actually. Whee! So this is kind of a preview of what I reckon this faction will be about. It's just lots of EMP, lots of fragmentation, lots of kinetic damage. Yep, and we just popped something really important back there. Can we disable the tier? Yep, the tier is having a terrible day. And again, if I replaced the frag on those big turrets with high explosive, it'll probably be doing a better job right now. But just, hey, I've got a theme and I'm committed to it. And anything the fragmentation can't handle, the thump damage certainly will. What the? I think some missiles just bounced. Oh no, they got distracted. Okay, you know what you want. Okay, let's turn this thing around. Maneuver! You must maneuver. Also, the tier has annoyingly good decoys at the moment. It's quite annoying. Tier is annoying. You like, even if you don't think it's hard, you gotta admit, it's annoying. Yay, superstructure dead. Come on, I actually want you to die. Overpan, darn it. Come on. Yeah, I'm just mucking around right now because I don't even care. Yep. See, that's what the tier's loaded with. They have really good decoys. And these missiles have signal processors on them. Whoop. So yeah, I think I'll leave it right there. It's just another custom faction design video, and yeah, I'm not designing just one. There's 5 of these guys, 5 of this lot I'm planning. And yeah, so this is the endgame one. EMP Kinetic is the current name for it. Although that's not all they're using. There'll be energy weapons as well. So on that note, thank you all so much for watching. Yes! You beauties! Thank you for blowing that tier's face off. I almost called it the tur again. The tur. People love it when I mispronounce things. So yeah, anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like, it really helps. And I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell!